Tonight, a move to shield undocumented workers in the U.S. from deportation gets a sweeping blow. A Texas judge hits the brakes on President Obama's executive actions on immigration. So what does this mean for undocumented workers and for the president's agenda? Also tonight, ISIS gains strength and allegiance as it takes on new territory, presenting a threat far more severe than what world leaders had imagined. Is putting boots on the ground the answer to wiping out the terror group? Tonight, military analyst Mike Lyons is here to weigh in. And we're going to turn to 2016, where a new poll shows Hillary Clinton is pummeling Chris Christie and doing so in his own backyard. Could Christie's campaign be over before it even begins? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard Fresh. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to begin tonight in Washington and also in Austin, Texas, where, well, in D.C., federal authorities are scrambling after a Texas judge temporarily blocked President Obama's executive actions on immigration. Texas is one of 26 states that had filed a lawsuit opposing the president's initiatives. Francisco Dominguez is one of millions of undocumented immigrants who would receive legal protections under President Obama's executive actions. But now that's on hold.
My life or my future is in the hands of politicians.
Last night, a federal judge in Texas temporarily blocked the president's actions that would give temporary legal status but not citizenship to more than 5 million undocumented immigrants.
I disagree with it. I think the law is on our side and history is on our side. And we are going to appeal it.
Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott filed the lawsuit last year when he was the state's attorney general.
We will not sit idly by while the president ignores the law and fails to secure the border.
The Department of Homeland Security was to start accepting applications from the undocumented immigrants tomorrow, but it says it will comply with the judge's ruling.
This process can be delayed, but we as a community will not be deterred.
This all comes as funding for the Department of Homeland Security is set to expire at the end of the month. Congressional Republicans are using that issue to wage a fight against the White House over the president's immigration actions.
It's harder now for the administration to say we deserve full funding for all the orders we're doing when you have a judge saying that what you're doing is illegal.
Now, immigration activists say they're going to continue working with the hope that the ruling is overturned. The White House issued a statement in response to that move out of Texas. The statement says, quote, "The Department of Justice, legal scholars, immigration experts, and the district court in Washington, D.C. have determined that the president's actions are well within his legal authority. The district court's decision wrongly prevents these lawful, common sense policies from taking effect." And of course, the White House has also said they're going to appeal this ruling, and most experts anticipate that there will be, if not a reversal, at least a temporary block on that judge's ruling. Let's get more on this as we bring in tonight's panel. We're joined by Jeannie Zaino. She, of course, professor of political science at Iona College, professor of campaign management at NYU, and professor of the RFL panel, as always. Thank you for being here. And Dominic Carter is here, political journalist and author. And let's, first of all, start with the politics of all this, because we still have, at the end of this month, Homeland Security funding is about to go bye-bye because they haven't passed the budget for it. And the Republicans are holding this because of the immigration actions on the executive order. The polls are out that say, Jeannie, that people are going to blame Republicans over the White House if DHS is defunded or if it shuts down for any period of time. Does this change that metric at all? Now Republicans can say, hey, look, a judge said it's not constitutional.
You know, it might. And we heard John Boehner say, you know, listen, we will let DHS run out of funding. We will go that far. And so this might change the calculation, but I do think we have to put it into perspective. You know, this is a judge appointed by George W. Bush. This is a judge who has, for a long time, made rulings that Republicans have felt are in their best interest, and that was why they filed this suit in Texas, where he was sitting. And so it's not a surprise that he came out with this very narrow ruling on administrative grounds. And he has made the case, and there is some merit to this, that, you know, if he let this go forward and people began to reveal themselves as illegal immigrants, and then the action was found to be unconstitutional, they would be put in a difficult situation. Now, whether you buy that or not, that is a concern that people have. And so, you know, I'm not so certain this is as big of an issue as some people have said, because we know this is going to be moving up to the appellate level.
But that is a fairly nuanced point that you're making, that it's depending on the political...
I'm a nuanced person, Andrew.
Of course, the political leanings of the judge, though, that's not something that we'll say low information voters might necessarily get. And I've seen tweets today from, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, all saying, hey, even a judge says this thing is unconstitutional now. Does this change the public perception? I mean, you're the polls expert. Does this change the public perception of where the parties stand on that potential fight with the budget showdown at the end of the month?
I don't think it changes public perception regarding the parties and where they stand. The judges do enjoy this kind of veneer where they are seen as above politics, but quite frankly, as we all know, they have opinions, and they have, we know when we look at some of these judges who appointed them, where they came from, if they were elected, who elected them. So, I don't think it's a big surprise that he made this decision, and I don't think, quite frankly, it really changes the politics here. Democrats who have been in support of this know who's making this decision, and Republicans are not going to change their mind.
And Andrew, to the professor's point, and it is a very good one, keep in mind this is only one judge. And anyone that thinks that politics does not affect the judicial, I got a bridge that I want to sell you. And so this judge will probably be overruled, but the way I'm looking at this might be a backhanded way of aiding the president, because he was about to go to war with Republicans. He's going forward with his immigration plan. Republicans are not going to fund the Department of Homeland Security. It was going to be a mess. And so maybe this will give some time for calmer heads to prevail. I mean, I don't see the president backing up.
Right.
I do question on a personal level if he really has the authority to do all the things as it relates to immigration that he's proposing, but maybe this is a good thing.
But doesn't this give Republicans another argument to not back down on this DHS funding showdown?
But they were going to do that anyway. Both parties were going to do that anyway. No matter what this judge or any other judge ruled, no side was going to back down. And I watched earlier today, the Attorney General was even indicating that he expected this to go to the Supreme Court.
This, by the way, that you just saw a picture of the judge who issued the ruling in Texas. Odds are this is probably going to go to the Supreme Court at some point, but do you think that DHS runs out of money at the end of this month? Do you think we have yet another budget showdown?
It would not be smart on the behalf of Republican leadership, because now they can say we have the House, we have the Senate, and we're big boys, and we're going to show you how to run government based on their argument the way that Mr. Obama did not. And within weeks of taking over, all of a sudden Homeland Security is no money. That wouldn't be a good idea.
But Jeannie, this sounds like the same conversation we had before the fiscal cliff, before we had the budget.
It's always the same conversation.
Even the government shutdown, and Republicans didn't pay a price for it at the ballot box.
No, they didn't. Yeah, it feels like deja vu. I mean, they haven't paid a price, but in this case, I mean, it's possible to say if the president, as Dominic mentioned, is unable to go forward with his executive order, the judge's ruling stands, he is unable to go forward, do Republicans really have a leg to stand on then by saying they are going to defund or refuse to fund further Homeland Security? It may put them in a box. I mean, we don't know at this point, but it may make it difficult for Republicans to say, we're not going to fund. Because what are the grounds that they have to stand on at this point?
Is that in part because we're talking about Homeland Security, and that's an issue that Republicans have tried to really monopolize and for the most part have successfully since the Bush administration? People think Homeland Security, they generally think Republicans are stronger on it than Democrats are. Is this too close to their hearts for them to play games with?
No. I mean, I think that they've said clearly that they will withhold funding if the president's executive order goes forward. But in this case now, the judge may have, as Dominic mentioned, just taken the wind out of their sails by saying the executive order is not going to go forward anyways, unless it's overturned before we get to that point, in which case they could then refuse to fund. I do think it feels a little bit, like you mentioned, like deja vu all over again, where we are, in the same position. And I think Americans tend to tune out. Homeland Security should be what the Republicans want to fund, and yet you have a Republican Party saying they're not going to fund it over a political battle. I mean, it's hard to understand.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to shift to another topic that I think people have been tuning out to, or tuning out from to a certain degree, and that's the fight against ISIS. We're going to head overseas, where ISIS is apparently gaining new ground, presenting a tougher battle than the one that world leaders had anticipated. So the question is sending in ground troops the only way to defeat the terror network? The president is looking for an authorization for the use of force. We're going to turn to our military analyst, Mike Lyons, and see what he has to say on the issue when we come back.